Today we're looking at arrays. There's only really two differences between variables and arrays. Number one, variables only hold one value, and arrays can store multiple values. Number two is syntax. So when you use an array, you enclose the data type or put square brackets at the end of a data type to let the computer know that there's more than one value. The values themselves are enclosed within curly braces. Let's look at another example. Declare the data type, the variable name, and give it a value. For arrays, declare the data type, let the computer know that there's more than one value, give it a name, and then give it values. There's a difference between declaring a variable or an array and initializing a variable or array. When we declare a variable, we give it a data type, we give it a name, and that's it. When we initialize, we give it a data type, a name, and a value. Data type, name, and value. This is how we initialize an array. For declaring an array, it's a little bit different. So the syntax for initializing an array is the data type, the variable name, and then the values you are assigning to it. When we declare an array, it goes data type, variable name, and then equals new. Then we specify the data type once more. And in square brackets, we tell the computer how many positions we want to allocate for that array. So it would look something like this. Data type, tell the computer there's more than one value. Give it a name. Equals. New keyword because we are creating an object of the array class. You don't really need to know how this works, just know that it works. Then we specify the data type once more. And in the square brackets, we tell the computer how many positions we want to set aside for it. So in this case, we're creating a names array and we're setting aside 3 positions. On this line, it's essentially the same thing. We have 3 positions, except we're giving it values. We are initializing it. It has initial values. When an array is created by default, the computer will assign it index positions. The computer begins counting at 0. If we wanted to print specifically Evan or index position 2, we can simply do this by specifying the array name and then the index position. The name of the array is names, and the index position we are specifying is 2. We can also reassign values stored in the array. It's as simple as that. It's very similar to reassigning the value of a variable. The only difference is we need to specify where it's being reassigned. There's a very important method or property of arrays that you should know, and it's the dot length property. So you specify the array name, and then you specify the length method or the length property. So names.length will count how many values are in the array. And this is human readable, meaning it will count 1, 2, and then 3. So just to be more specific, this is a property or a variable. It does not have the round brackets at the end, so it is not considered a method or a function. It's simply a variable within the array class itself. Notice that this returns 3. Human readable, and counting begins at 1 and goes up to 3. Let's try printing the array in its entirety. So we get some cryptic code here, But what's actually happening is it is printing the array's physical location in memory. To get around this, you call the arrays class and then the toString method, and as an argument you provide the array itself. This converts the memory location. Instead of returning the memory location, it'll look at the array and it will convert all of its values to string so that humans can read it. Last but not least, if you want to print an array, usually you'll end up looping through it. There are two methods to loop through an array. Number one is to loop index positions. In this case, it'll be 0 to 2. The other way to loop through an array is to loop by value. So let's look at the first method. This is something that's going to come up over and over and over again, and it's super important to know because it's a rock solid way of printing an array. So the idea is to loop 0, 1, and 2. We can use a for loop because we know exactly how many times the loop is going to execute. So first we'll set up our initial counter. The starting position of the array is 0. That needs to be the starting position as the counter variable as well. The cutoff condition is 2, or it could be 5, or it could be 12, or it could be 26. We don't know, but one thing is for sure. The array name .length method or variable will return the count of the array. In this case, the count is 3. Remember, counting begins at 1. The computer begins at 0 for positioning. So, whether it's 15 or 26 or 12, we're able to return the count of the array. Counter is 0. This is the most common condition you'll write for looping through a loop. You'll specify that the counter specifically is less than, not less than or equal to, not greater than, but specifically is less than the length of the array. So the way the computer sees this is that counter is 0. We define that in our starting position. The maximum, the length of this array is 3. Human counting 1, 2, and 3. When we say counter is less than 3, we are looping these numbers 0, 1, and 2. Once counter does hit 3, this condition will be false. 3 is not less than 3, it is equal to 3. Again, start at 0, 3 is never truly reached. So it goes 0, 1, and 2. These numbers align perfectly with our index positions. And this is method 1, loop index positions. The final part of the for loop will have us increment the counter. So because counter is a variable, and it's going from 0 to 1 to 2, when we print a specific location from the array, which is called names, we can simply use the counter as an argument for the index position. Instead of hard coding 0 and getting Brad show up all the time, we can use the variable which is always changing, the loop variable from 0 to 2. This will loop through the array based on index position. We call the array and specify our loop variable as the index position to print out the actual values of the array. I hope that makes sense. Method 2, the syntax is a bit more simplistic. So in method 2, we use something called a for each loop. So instead of relying on integers and looping through index positions, instead of relying on this here, we're actually looping through the strings contained within the array itself. So we set up a for loop as usual. And again, our counter is not based on numerical values. It is based on the data type contained within the array. So our counter in this case will be of type string. And then we'll give it a name. And the cutoff condition for this set is considered the set itself. So you simply apply the array name. So what we are saying here is that for every string occurrence within the names array, so it will execute 1, 2, and 3 times. There are 3 string occurrences within the names array. Value specifically represents a string occurrence within the array. So we can simply specify to print this string occurrence. Excuse me. So here we'll add an M1 text to specify that it's the first method of looping by index number. And in the second example, we use the M2 identifier to let us know that we're looping through by value, or by string value, or by string position.